Good afternoon. The Senate will come to order. At this time, I'd ask that all unauthorized persons exit our beautiful chamber. In lieu of you being a few minutes later than normal, still 30 seconds early for the starting, we took a quick brief of your highlights that you're going to mention today, and overwhelmed at the depth today is actually a lot different than normal, to be honest with you. Chair recognizes the senator from the 53rd.
Mr. President, that was awfully loud, but it's a great day, and it's a beautiful day at the Capitol for all these men and women to work on behalf of the people of Georgia. Moment in time, 1903, Niagara Falls runs out of water because of the drought. And today just happens to be National Water Day, National Sing Out Day, and I think I'll sing a song later. Also, the 1934, the first Masters tournament began on March 22nd, and the Green Jacket ceremony began in 1949, which I still do not have my green jacket. Anybody help me with that? Mr. President, the journal's been read and found to be correct. Has it not? Okay, well, nobody told me. Well, I think okay, now I know.
It was underneath that long list of important things you just told us about.
Yes, sir. Mr. President, the journal has been read, and we have found one correction to be made to the journal of March 17, 2001. The correction relates to the report of the Committee on Judiciary submitted that day, and I would ask that you recognize the senator from the 17th to explain the correction.
Just to clarify, 2021, not 2001.
2021. Did I make an error? See, my brain just expedites that, and I just didn't
Chair
catch
recognizes the senator from the 17th.
Thank you, Mr. President. I guess we all do make mistakes in some days. Speaking of that, I rise to make a correction to my report on the Committee on Judiciary that was filed with the Secretary of Senate on March 16th and reported to the Senate on March 17th. The report stated the Committee on Judiciary recommended House Bill 154 do pass. The report should have read House Bill 154 do pass by substitute LC 33-8766S. Mr. President, at the appropriate time, I'd like to make a motion to correct the journal to reflect the correct substitute.
This is the appropriate time, and you are now recognized for that motion.
Mr. President, I ask unanimous consent that the journal of March 17, 2021 be corrected to reflect the report of the Committee on Judiciary of that day be changed to reflect that House Bill 154 do pass by substitute LC 33-8766S.
Mr. Secretary, can you please read the caption of House Bill 154?
House Bill 154 by Representative Reeves of the 34th and others, a bill to be entitled an act to amend Title 19 of the OCGA relating to domestic relations so as to strengthen, clarify, and update provisions relating to the protection of children, including foster children and adopted children, to provide for related matters and for other purposes. This completes the order, Mr. President.
Senator from the 17th has asked for unanimous consent that the Senate Journal for March 17th be corrected to reflect that the report from the Committee on Judiciary read House Bill 154 do pass by substitute. Is there objection? The chair hears none, and the journal is requested. Is there objection to dispensing with the reading of the journal? The chair hears none, and the reading of the journal is dispensed with. Is there objection to the confirmation of the journal? The chair hears none, and the journal is confirmed. All senators who have bills or resolutions, please bring them to the Secretary's desk at this time. Mr. Secretary, first reading of Senate bills and resolutions, please.
Senate Bill 302 by Senator Walker of the 20th, a bill to be entitled an act to amend an act to provide for minimum compensation for certain county officers of Pulaski County, approved April 11th.
State and local government.
Senate Bill 303 by Senator Mullis of the 53rd, a bill to be entitled an act to amend Article 1 of Chapter 8 of Title 4 of the OCGA relating to dogs generally so as to provide for standards for commercial breeders.
Agriculture and Consumer Affairs.
Senate Bill 304 by Senator Kennedy of the 18th, a bill to be entitled an act to create the Peach County Public Facilities Authority to provide for the appointment of members of the authority.
State and local government.
Senate Bill 305 by Senator Burke of the 11th, a bill to be entitled an act to provide a homestead exemption from Early County School District ad valorem taxes for educational purposes.
State and local government.
Senate Bill 306 by Senator Jones of the 10th, a bill to be entitled an act to amend an act to provide for a new Board of Commissioners of Henry County approved March 28, 1974.
State and local government.
Senate Resolution 281 by Senators Miller of the 49th and others, a resolution creating the Senate Study Committee on Violence Against Healthcare Workers and for other purposes.
Rules.
Senate Resolution 282 by Senators Jones II of the 22nd and others, a resolution creating the Senate Universal Basic Income Program Study Committee and for other purposes.
Rules.
Senate Resolution 283 by Senators Jones II of the 22nd and others, a resolution creating the Senate Improving Access to Healthy Foods and Ending Food.
Rules.
This completes the order, Mr. President.
For what purpose does the senator from the 20th rise?
Mr. President, I ask unanimous consent that the rules be suspended to allow for first reading and reference of a Senate local bill, Senate Bill 307.
Mr. Secretary, will you please read the caption to Senate Bill 307?
Senate Bill 307 by Senator Walker of the 20th, a bill to be entitled an act to create a Board of Elections and Registration for Pulaski County, to provide for related matters, to provide for an effective date, and for other purposes. This completes the order, Mr. President.
Senator from the 20th has asked for unanimous consent that the rules be suspended to allow for the first reading and reference of a Senate local bill, Senate Bill 307. Is there objection? Chair hears none, and it is assigned to state and local government. Mr. Secretary, first reading and reference of House bills and resolutions, please.
House Bill 732 by Representatives Dreyer of the 59th and others, a bill to be entitled an act to amend an act providing a homestead exemption from City of Atlanta Independent School
State and
District.
local government.
House Bill 739 by Representatives Ralston of the 7th, a bill to be entitled an act to amend an act to provide for a new charter for the City of Blue Ridge and Fannin County, approved March 21st, 1989.
State and local government.
House Bill 740 by Representatives Benton of the 31st, a bill to be entitled an act to amend an act incorporating the town of Pendergrass in the county of Jackson.
State and local government.
House Bill 753 by Representative Smith of the 70th and others, a bill to be entitled an act to create the Coweta County Public Facilities Authority, to provide for a short title, to provide for purpose and
State and
scope.
local government.
House Bill 754 by Representative Benton of the 31st, a bill to be entitled an act to amend an act to provide for a new charter for the City of Houston, Georgia, approved April 24th.
State and local government.
House Bill 757 by Representatives Gwynn of the 89th and others, a bill to be entitled an act to amend the Atlanta Urban Enterprise Zone Act, approved March 24th, 1988.
State and local government.
House Bill 759 by Representatives Petrie of the 166th, a bill to be entitled an act to authorize the governing authority of the town of Thunderbolt to levy an excise tax pursuant
State and
to
local government.
House Bill 769 by Representative Mathiak of the 73rd and others, a bill to be entitled an act to amend an act to provide a Board of Elections for Spalding County, approved March 19th, 1987.
State and local government.
This completes the order, Mr. President.
Mr. Secretary, will you please read reports of standing committees now?
Mr. President, the Senate Committee on Appropriations has had under consideration the following legislation, has instructed me to report the same back to the Senate with the following recommendation. House Bill 81, due pass by substitute. House Resolution 24, due pass. House Resolution 25, due pass. House Resolution 26, due pass. Respectfully submitted, Senator Tillery of the 19th District Chairman. Mr. President, the Senate Committee on Education and Youth has had under consideration the following legislation and has instructed me to report the same back to the Senate with the following recommendation. House Bill 455, due pass by substitute. Respectfully submitted, Senator Payne of the 54th District Chairman. Mr. President, the Senate Committee on Ethics has had under consideration the following legislation and has instructed me to report the same back to the Senate with the following recommendation. House Bill 333, due pass by committee substitute. Respectfully submitted, Senator Burns of the 23rd District Chairman. Mr. President, the Senate Committee on Judiciary has had under consideration the following legislation and has instructed me to report the same back to the Senate with the following recommendation. House Bill 363, due pass. Respectfully submitted, Senator Strickland of the 17th District Chairman. Mr. President, the Senate Committee on Public Safety has had under consideration the following legislation and has instructed me to report the same back to the Senate with the following recommendation. House Bill 286, due pass by substitute. House Bill 353, due pass. House Bill 289, due pass by substitute. House Bill 236, due pass. Respectfully submitted, Senator Albers of the 56th District Chairman. Mr. President, the Senate Committee on Regulated Industries and Utilities has had under consideration the following legislation and has instructed me to report the same back to the Senate with the following recommendation. House Bill 328, due pass. Respectfully submitted, Senator Cowser of the 46th District Chairman. Mr. President, the Senate Committee on State and Local Governmental Operations has had under consideration the following legislation, has instructed me to report the same back to the Senate with the following recommendation. Senate Bill 285, due pass by substitute. Senate Bill 297, due pass. Senate Bill 298, due pass. House Bill 582, due pass. House Bill 625 do pass. House Bill 730 do pass. House Bill 734 do pass. House Bill 742 do pass. Respectfully submitted, Senator Anderson of the 24th District, Chairman. Mr. President, the Senate Committee on Transportation has had under consideration the following legislation, has instructed me to report the same back to the Senate with the following recommendation. House Bill 165 do pass. House Resolution 119 do pass. House Resolution 282 do pass. Respectfully submitted, Senator Ginn of the 47th District, Chairman. This completes the order, Mr. President.
Ms. Secretary, will you please read bills and resolutions for the second time?
Senate Resolution 190 by Senator Brass of the 28th and others. Congress allow individuals to retain the right to use their image and likeness and shield them from copyright infringement. Urge. Senate Resolution 201 by Senator Miller of the 49th and others. SK Innovation. Recognize. House Bill 81 by Representative Ralston of the 7th and others. General Appropriations, State Fiscal Year, July 1st, 2021 through June 30th, 2022. House Bill 141 by Representative Gaines of the 117th and others, a criminal procedure, requirements for awards made from Georgia Crime Victims Emergency Fund to medical service providers provide. House Bill 165 by Representative Barr of the 103rd and others, motor vehicles, use of mounts on windshields for the support of wireless telecommunications devices and standalone electronic devices under certain circumstances allow. House Bill 173 by Representatives Benton of the 31st and others, retirement and pensions, eligible large retirement systems assessed that may be invested in alternative investments, increased percentage. House Bill 236 by Representative Neal of the 74th and others, domestic relations, additional monitoring of victim after granting of a temporary protective order, provide. House Bill 282 by Representative Meeks of the 178th and others, ad valorem tax, qualified timberland property, add a definition. House Bill 286 by Representative Gaines of the 117th and others, local government, restrictability of county governing authorities to reduce funding for county police departments. House Bill 287 by Representative Rich of the 97th and others, education, tobacco and vapor products and course of instruction regarding alcohol and drugs include. House Bill 289 by Representative Belton of the 112th and others, motor vehicles, issuance of Class C driver's licenses, provide for requirements. House Bill 307 by Representative Cooper of the 43rd and others, Georgia Telehealth Act, revised. House Bill 328 by Representative Montahan of the 17th and others, public utilities, one-time right-of-way permit-free and reduce annual right-of-way use fees, established. House Bill 333 by Representatives Estration of the 104th and others, Ethics in Government Act of 2021, enact. House Bill 342 by Representatives Washburn of the 141st and others, professions and businesses, certain advisements related to plumbing, prohibit. House Bill 353 by Representative Jones of the 25th and others, motor vehicles, clarify what constitutes an obstruction for purposes of exceptions to when a vehicle is to drive on the right side of the roadway. House Bill 363 by Representative LaHood of the 175th and others, crimes and offenses, protection of elder persons, revised definitions. House Bill 371 by Representative Gunter of the 8 and others, evidence, certain proceedings may be conducted by video conference, provide. House Bill 451 by Representatives Lumsden of the 12th and others, ad valorem tax, property, fair market value applicable to inventor, provisions. House Bill 455 by Representative Barr of the 103rd and others, education, student transportation, revise a provision. House Bill 479 by Representative Reeves of the 34th and others, criminal procedure, revise certain arrest powers, provisions. House Bill 498 by Representative Walston of the 172nd and others, ad valorem tax, property, expand an exemption for agricultural equipment and certain farm products. House Bill 534 by Representatives Bonner of the 72nd and others, crime and offenses, promoting illegal drag racing and laying drags, provide for offense. House Bill 562 by Representatives Carpenter of the 4th and others, criminal procedure, add DFCS case managers to people for whom arrest warrants may be issued only by certain judicial officers. House Bill 611 by Representatives Trocas of the 138th and others, state government, a definition of small business, change. House Resolution 24 by Representatives Mallow of the 163rd and others, Lucci, Dominic, Bryan, compensate. House Resolution 25 by Representatives Mallow of the 163rd and others, Jones, Mark Jason, compensate. House Resolution 26 by Representatives Mallow of the 163rd and others, Gardner, Kenneth, Eric, compensate. House Resolution 119 by Representatives Ralston of the 7th and others, Senator Johnny Isaacson Bridge, Chapman County, dedicate. House Resolution 183 by Representative Knight of the 130th and others. Congress, pass Recovering America's Wildlife Act, urge. House Resolution 282 by Representative Gunter of the 8th and others. Sidney Grace Jones Memorial Intersection, dedicate. This completes the order, Mr. President.
It's now time for our afternoon roll call. Are there any motions to excuse? Chair recognizes the senator from the 33rd.
Thank you, Mr. President, and good morning, y'all. I ask for unanimous consent to excuse the senators from the 35th and the 38th for business outside the Capitol, sir.
Without objection, the senators from the 35th and 38th are excused. The chair recognizes the majority whip.
Unanimous consent to excuse the senator from the 47th.
Without objection, the senator from the 47th is excused. Are there any additional motions to excuse? The chair sees none. The secretary will call the roll. Senators, signify your presence by voting the yea switch. The secretary will unlock the machine. Have all senators voted your attendance? Have all senators voted your attendance? All right, Mr. Secretary, please close the machine. It's now time for our Pledge of Allegiance and the introduction of our chaplain. I'd ask that all senators take your seats and cease all audible conversations. Doorkeepers, please secure the chamber at this time. It's my honor to recognize the senator from the 44th to lead us in our pledge and to introduce our chaplain.
Thank you very much, Mr. President. Would you join me in our Pledge of Allegiance to the flag? I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Now to the Georgia flag. Good afternoon. I am delighted to present our chaplain for this afternoon, Reverend Dr. Wayne Mims, who is the senior pastor of Shiloh United Methodist Church in Lovejoy, Georgia. Dr. Mims is a native of Renova, Mississippi. He received his BS degree in biology from Stillman College in Tuscaloosa, Alabama. In December of 1990, Reverend Mims graduated from the Mike Monterey School of Air Traffic Control in Oklahoma City, Oklahoma, where he was one of only 4 blacks from his input to pass out of a class of 425 people. Reverend Mims has been an employee of the Federal Aviation Administration since January 1988, and he has held positions as air traffic control specialist, traffic management coordinator, operations supervisor, executive and technical representative, and air traffic manager of Birmingham Air Traffic Control Tower. Reverend Mims has won numerous awards for his diligent work as an air traffic controller and manager. Reverend Mims is married to Carice Burton of Birmingham, Alabama, and they are blessed to have 3 wonderful daughters. Reverend Mims accepted the call to ministry in October 2003. He received his Master's of Divinity from the Interdenominational Theological Center, Gammon Theological Seminary here in Atlanta, with a concentration of psychology, of religion, pastoral care, and counseling. He earned his PhD from Northwestern Theological Seminary in 2010 with a concentration in New Church Development. Reverend Mims is a former young adult minister for Andrews Chapel United Methodist Church in Jonesboro, my home church. He is the former pastor of Hosanna United Methodist Church in Griffin, Georgia. He's an accomplished writer, and he has led men's retreats for district churches as well as leading seminars at the North Georgia Conference United Methodist Men's Retreat at Rock Eagle. And Reverend Mims is a blogger, and you can read his daily blogs. As senior pastor of Shiloh United Methodist Church, the church has enjoyed consistent growth. Dr. Mims believed that in order to cultivate a relationship with God, you must study the Word, meditate on the Word, and pray for wisdom, knowledge, and understanding. Dr. Mims' motto comes from Matthew 6:33, which states, "But seek ye first the kingdom of God and his righteousness, and all these things shall be added unto you." He also believes if you fervently seek God, extraordinary things happen when we allow ourselves to be used by him in his service. Senators, our chaplain for today, Reverend Dr. Wayne Mims. Dr. Mims.
Good afternoon. One of the things that I was thinking about when Senator Davenport asked me to do this, and I'm like, so am I going to preach like it's Sunday morning? Am I going to act as if we're at a outing outside? Or do I talk to you as if you're one of us? And I realize that all of us are Georgians. And the one thing that I've realized over my tenure here since I moved to Georgia years ago, that we have a mighty work to do in this place. And my word for you today is really all about us, realizing that during this time of pandemic that we found ourselves in, that all of us are in need of one another. It doesn't matter how much money you make. It doesn't matter what your background is. It doesn't matter who your folks are. But it's all about who we are as Georgians, coming together as brothers and sisters, realizing that this time we need each other more now than ever. And I want to leave you with a prayer that I was thinking about over the past couple of days that I think will help move all of us in a direction that we will become one and on one accord. So if you will you bow your heads with me for a moment of prayer? Eternal God, our Father, we come at this hour of the day thanking you for all of the blessings that you have bestowed upon each and every one of us. Heavenly Father, just as you gave wisdom to Moses to appoint elders among the Israelites, you blessed our founders with the wisdom to divide our country into individual states. You've empowered our governor and state legislature to make laws and decrees which manage our daily lives and to make our lives safe and to also protect us. Lord, right now in the name of Jesus, we pray for our governor and our lieutenant governor and our state legislators, giving them strength and wisdom to guide all of their decisions that they make. Lord, surround them with people from all walks of life and many backgrounds. Bring them people of high moral character and spiritual maturity. Among the many voices which cry out to them every day, may they hear the voice above all others that is yours. Lord, as we look to our governor and to our senators today, give them assurance and guidance, especially in this time of crisis and pandemic. Lord, inspire them to speak through the power of the Holy Spirit that is among all of us. Lord, as we ask you to fill our city and our state leaders with wisdom, knowledge, understanding, and discernment, grant them favor, increase their faith, prepare them to pursue your excellence. Draw them to you and cause them to know who you are to help fulfill your purposes. Lord, I ask in the name of Jesus that you place people in their paths that will provide scriptural, sound, and godly counsel. Impart your wisdom and revelation to them about leadership and help them to actually lead. Lord, deal with our leaders about keeping their hearts and motives pure. Lord, we ask that you make their hearts pliable, willing and obedient to your will. Cause each of their lives to glorify your name. Lord God in heaven, forgive our leaders in this house for all of their sins and transgressions. Lord, forgive them if they've had greed in their life, or hypocrisy, or injustice, or selfish ambition, or pride, or arrogance, or idolatry, or adultery, slander, sexism, elitism, oppression, partiality, lust, or manipulation, lying, or ungodliness, and any other acts of sinfulness. Lord, we ask that you forgive them, that they will be able to realize, Lord, that you are with them every step of the way. Lord God in heaven, have mercy on this state. Have mercy on this body. Allow your Holy Spirit to continue to remind our local and state and national leaders of all that they have been called to do, that they will never ever forget what their calling is. Lord, help our leaders right now to yield not into temptation, but deliver them all from the evil one. So come now, Holy Spirit. Come now, Holy Spirit, until our cups are runneth over. Lord, we love you, we praise you, and we magnify your glorious name. It is in the name of our Lord and Savior, Jesus Christ, we pray. Amen.
Senate will come back to order. Are there any unanimous consents? Chair recognizes the senator from the 28th to introduce the Doctor of the Day.
Thank you, Mr. President. It gives me great honor today to introduce my good friend, Dr. Gary Bernstein. Gary's got a diverse background in clinical care, management, and teaching. In 2012, he joined Cancer Treatment Centers of America in Atlanta, or actually down in Noonan, as a general surgeon and the hospital's medical director of surgical assistance. He's been a practicing surgeon since 1991. He spends most of his time at CTCA helping other surgeons perform complex operations. A three-time graduate of Emory University in Atlanta, Dr. Bernstein earned his Bachelor's of Arts in Chemistry in 1982, his Doctor of Medicine in 86, and his Master of Business Administration in 1997. He completed his residency in general surgery, serving as chief resident at Emory University Hospital between 86 and 91. Dr. Bernstein is certified by the American Board of Surgery and the National Board of Medical Examiners. He also is a fellow with the American College of Surgeons. Dr. Bernstein has been a member of the American Medical Association, the Medical Association of Georgia, the Medical Association of Atlanta, and the American College of Physician Executives. But more importantly, Dr. Bernstein has worked with my wife for the last almost 10 years now in surgery, and just has become a close friend of both Megan and mine. And he's come to our house and has libations with us and just kind of discusses life in general. And just a great man. His mom lives right down the street from us, and he's just a great friend to our community, and we're so honored. I'm honored to have him here as our Doctor of the Day. So thank you all, and if you get a chance, go see Dr. Bernstein down in the medical room, whatever it's called. Thank you, Mr. President.
First aid station. Does any senator wish to rise on a point of personal privilege? Chair recognizes the senator from the 19th for a point of personal privilege.
Thank you, Mr. President, members of the
Hold
Senate.
on, Senator.
Okay.
I would ask this chamber to come back to order. Offer your attention to the senator in the well for a point of personal privilege.
Senators, thank you so much for giving me your attention today. I appreciate you allowing me to present this point of personal privilege, but really it's a resolution on behalf of the Senate. Tommy Hurd is in the balcony right now. Tommy, do you mind standing up for us? Tommy is, many of you know him already. He's involved on our housekeeping team with Georgia Building Authority since 2017. Tommy has received distinction and recognition from all the folks here in the Capitol already, those on the House side, also the state troopers, the Lieutenant Governor's office, our President of the Senate, many of you for his attention to detail, his dedication, his encouragement, his sincere service, and his work ethic. And Tommy, on behalf of the Senate and behalf of all Georgians, we just want to say thank you. Thank you today. Appreciate what you do. We might have scared you a little bit dragging you here this morning, but now you know what it was all about, and thank you for joining us. Thank you, Mr. President, and I yield the well.
Absolutely. Great to recognize you, Tommy. Great job. Chair recognizes the senator from the 42nd for a point of personal privilege.
Thank you, Mr. President. I am rising in honor of Women's History Month, and I want to tell you all about Alice Harrell Strickland, who was a politician and activist born in Forsyth County in 1859. After she married Henry Strickland Jr., they moved to his hometown of Duluth, which at that point was a cotton trading town that, according to the website Georgia Women of Achievement, was a cotton trading town with a bad reputation for drunken brawls and knifings. Her husband died when they still had 2 out of their 7 children at home. She noticed the need for a health clinic and a hospital in Duluth and offered the entire 2nd floor of her house as a prenatal clinic and a facility for surgery for children. 1 year after the 19th Amendment was enacted, she ran for mayor of Duluth. At the age of 62, she became the first woman ever elected mayor in Georgia, defying society's expectations of what a woman, and a woman over the age of 60, could do. She was also a dedicated conservationist who established the first community forest in Georgia. Her courage and dedication to our state and her pioneering decision to run for office set an example for all Georgians, and we celebrate her for breaking these barriers. Thank you, Mr. President. I yield the well.
Chair recognizes the senator from the 8th for a point of personal privilege.
Oh, thank you, Mr. President. First off, I just want to say as a freshman senator, I want to thank everyone, all of my colleagues in this chamber for all the kindness that you've extended to me. And, you know, I think that we really do great work on behalf of the people of Georgia. And it's been one of the greatest honors of my life to have the ability to serve with you. So thank you for that. Just wanted to come to the well, in light of this week being designated National Ag Week, and as a farmer myself, and a state senator who represents one of Georgia's most dynamic and diverse agricultural regions, I just wanted to take a minute and recognize all of our state's farmers and agricultural workers. I majored in ag economics at the University of Georgia. We constantly studied the Great Depression and the farm economy collapse of the 1980s. I came of age in the 1980s on our farm during one of the most historically tough times for our nation's family farms. From 1980 to 1990, 1/3 of American family farms were foreclosed on. I saw firsthand the resilience and fierce determination Georgia's farm families had to hold on to their farms in the face of tremendous adversity. During those days, we all did the best we could with what we had. I saw that same bristled-up agricultural spirit rise to the top once again as our nation was in the deepest valley of the COVID pandemic. Commodity prices had tumbled, and I took many calls from worried farmers asking the question, do I plant a crop knowing that how things currently stand, I will lose hundreds of thousands of dollars that I can't afford to pay back, or do I sit this crop year out while we hope and pray for things to get better? This question was answered perfectly at a farm meeting I attended during that time. The younger farmers were all posing the question, what do we do? One old farmer in particular, who had made over 50 crops in his life, spoke up and said, son, we're going to do what we've always done. We're going to plan on faith. Faith that it'll rain, faith that the sun will shine, faith that the Lord will bless our hard work and our farms. Because, son, the American people are depending on us to feed and clothe the country, just as we always have. We've never let them down, and we're not about to start now. Colleagues, that old farmer's statement indeed embodies the fighting spirit and determination that exemplifies the American farmer. So to everyone, from the farmer to the farm worker, to the ag lender, to the mechanic, to the equipment dealer, to the fertilizer salesman, to the beekeeper, to the crop duster, and everyone else who keeps our ag economy rolling, thank you. You are all indeed great Americans. Thank you, Mr. President. I yield the well.
Thank you, Senator. Chair recognizes the senator from the 40th for a point of personal privilege.
Thank you, Mr. President, members of the Senate. There was a poster that hung in Speaker Tom Murphy's office that I used to enjoy looking at. It was a poster of all 180 headshots of members of the Georgia General Assembly, members of the House of Representatives. The year was 1966, the year that my mother gave birth to me. I liked to look at the picture because it showed me how different my mother's world was from mine. The representatives in the pictures were all males, except for one. Who was she, and what was her story? There are a few members in the Senate who knew who she was, but in honor of Women's History Month, I had to do some research. She was Grace Towns Hamilton, the first black female to ever serve in the Georgia General Assembly. Grace's parents were educators, and Grace spent much of her childhood at Atlanta University. After completing graduate work in Ohio, Grace returned home to teach at Clark College. Marriage took her to Memphis for a decade, but the family returned to Atlanta, where Grace worked for the Atlanta Urban League, leading the cause for improving education, health care, and voting rights and housing for black communities. Following the passage of the Civil Rights Act, Grace saw an opportunity to run for the state legislature, and she won. Hence her headshot in the 1966 poster hanging in Speaker Murphy's office. She served 18 years and was the principal architect of the 1973 City of Atlanta Charter. In 1984, Grace lost her re-election campaign to a young black activist who was 1/3 her age, Representative Mabel Thomas, known to us as Able Mabel. Here's where I start connecting to that story. I had the pleasure of serving with Able Mabel when I served in the House in the early 2000s, and when I returned to politics, Mabel did too. When Able Mabel says something, she tells it like it is, and you just have to listen. Representative Grace Towns Hamilton and Able Mabel Thomas, two women who broke barriers for all women of the Georgia General Assembly. Our day is coming. Thank you, Mr. President. I yield the well.
Chair recognizes the senator from the 14th for a point of personal privilege.
Thank you, Mr. President. The definition of discrimination, the unjust or prejudicial treatment of different categories of people or things, especially on the grounds of race, age, or sex. Last week, you had a horrific incident whereas 9 people were shot. Interestingly enough, the media keeps stating a white man killed them. Why does that matter? I thought color doesn't matter. Supposedly, it was a hate crime against Asian Americans. But law enforcement continues to warn against jumping to conclusions. Interestingly enough, when it isn't a white person, we're told not to rush to justice or judgment. It is true, many Asians did lose their lives, and that's tragic. But what does it matter when Hispanic Iglesias R. Hernandez matter? Does his life not matter? He was Hispanic, and he was shot. Do you hear that in the narrative? No, it's a false narrative. You're hypocrites for facilitating intimidation, false statements, and race baiting. Why not be transparent? Are you afraid of the truth? The reality is, this person shot people, and all lives matter regardless of their race. Why isn't the mayor of Atlanta and others talking about what's happening in Atlanta? Do black lives not matter anymore in the city of Atlanta? The murder rate's up 58%. 157 in 2020 were killed. Quote, it's ridiculous that now, even during the pandemic, we got more gun violence going on in the city than ever, says Columbus Ward, a longtime activist who lives in Atlanta's People's neighborhood. This year's violence claims several victims. And they talk about who was shot in the city of Atlanta. It's really scary because you don't know who's going to be shot, they said. I live in a small home in Atlanta, and yet I can't even walk outside. Indeed, no corner of the city was spared. Even Ked Humes, 35, was shot to death outside an apartment complex in Buckhead. And the story goes on, including the historic Fourth Ward. Again, I ask you, Are you afraid of transparency? You want to do everything possible to ensure the purchase of a weapon to protect yourself is restricted. But yet you accuse me and others like me, white folks, of suppressing the vote by actually ensuring voter integrity is strengthened. Let me be clear. Ensuring each legal vote is counted and cast for the intended candidate is not suppression. Stop the lies and false narrative. It's called being responsible and prudent. Thank you, Mr. President.
Chair recognizes the senator from the 4th for a point of personal privilege.
Thank you, Mr. President. I'm here today to bring to you, possibly if you need one, if you want one, a personal lapel pin that says "Victory over COVID." This actually, I've got one on. My wife and I both, Joanne, have received our shots, and it's just a great, great feeling. But let me tell you a little bit about the artist that designed this. The artist that designed this is a young lady from Statesboro, Georgia, so I'm very proud of her and her family, personal friends of ours. Edie is excited to share the new project with you, V for Victory, V for COVID vaccinated lapel pins. Through this project, she hopes to increase awareness about the safety of the vaccine, inspire others, and do their part by getting vaccinated and raise funds to support COVID vaccination events and clinics. She's a Georgia Southern psychology major and also a Georgia artist. But if you want one of these pins, I have plenty of them here. Please feel free to use them. We actually, Governor Brian Kemp, we met with him this morning and gave him the first one. So they'll be over here on my desk. Thank you, Mr. President.
Chair recognizes the senator from the 56th for a point of personal privilege.
Thank you, Mr. President. Thursday of last week, in a series of since-deleted tweets, the Lincoln Project knowingly lied about me in a desperate attempt to remain relative and distract from the public from their own transgressions. Among other things, they falsely accused me of trying to suppress voters and people. In several tweets that also tagged my employer and several of its largest clients. These disgusting tactics are nothing new, but I will not allow this disgraced political action committee to try to cancel me or deceive my constituents or the American public. This is economic terrorism. The truth is, as they put in their tweet, I proudly co-sponsored and voted for Senate Bill 62, which provides ballots in the state of Georgia to have a watermark and a seal and a precinct number, a best practice, which was not controversial. In fact, I didn't sponsor and vote for a couple of other bills, which I took heat for, which were going to eliminate other provisions. My record is crystal clear. I believe voting is a sacred right that should be made available, transparent, and secure for all citizens. I'm proud of my work in this area. I will not allow myself to be canceled, nor threatened or intimidated based on lies about my record, particularly by a disgraced group facing well-publicized allegations of sexual harassment and financial improprieties, all of which I cited from major media sources on my press release. Even though the Lincoln Project is a flailing organization plagued by scandal and hypocrisy, its words matter and has devastating consequences. Obviously, their strong-arm strategy of tagging my employer and some of its biggest clients with their false and defamatory tweets about me was intended to destroy my career. And of course, regardless of the truth, I have already been falsely labeled and I lost my job. A job I loved. I work with some of the best people in my career. I recruited friends to come work for me. We did amazing work together, and that has been taken from me. And now there have been threats made against my entire family. The truth matters. People who are willing to subvert the truth for their own political and personal agendas are an imminent threat to our entire democracy. We cannot allow radical groups like the Lincoln Project to continue to use lies and deception to stoke division and destabilization of our great country. I'm taking a stand to defend the truth, and I hope each one of you that are here today will join me and every Georgian and every American to say enough is enough. I will not be canceled. I will not be threatened, and I will not be intimidated. I'm asking all Americans to stand up and do what is right. This situation can happen to any one of us here. It could happen to your family. It could happen to your work colleagues, to the people you worship with, and the people that live in your neighborhood. This is not political. It's not Democrat, Republican, or independent. It's the fundamental difference between right and wrong and good versus evil. The truth matters. Thank you, Mr. President. Thank you, colleagues. I yield the way.
Are there any additional points of personal privilege? The chair sees none. You have a consent calendar of privilege resolutions before you. Does any senator wish to remove a resolution from the consent calendar? The chair sees none. Is there objection to adoption of the For what purpose does the senator from the first rise?
Parliamentary inquiry.
State your inquiry.
Is this the appropriate time to amend House Bill 759, which is on the House first readers, or is this was that an earlier time?
House first reader? Yeah. Go to the committee, won't it? Let's talk to David.
Senator from the first got his question answered. All right, let's start over. You've got a consent calendar of privileged resolutions. Does any senator wish to remove a resolution from the consent calendar? Chair hears none. Is there objection to adoption of the resolutions on the consent calendar? The chair hears none, and the resolutions on the consent calendar are adopted. Are there any motions to withdraw and commit? Chair sees none. You have a consent calendar of local bills before you, Mr. Secretary. Are there any objections filed to any bills on the local consent calendar?
Mr. President, there are no objections filed.
What purpose does the senator from the 17th rise?
Mr. President, I ask unanimous consent to be excused from voting on the local consent calendar pursuant to Senate Rule 5-1.8D.
Without objection, the senator from the 17th is excused from this vote on the local consent calendar. Is there objection to agree in the report of the Committee on State and Local Government, which is favorable to the passage of the bills on the local calendar? Chair hears none, and the report of the committee is agreed to. The question is on the passage of the bills on the local consent calendar. All those in favor vote yea, opposed nay. The Secretary will unlock the machine. Have all senators voted? Check your machine, especially the senator from the 37th. Mr. Secretary, please close the machine. On the passage of the bills on the local calendar, the yeas are 53, the nays are 0, and the bills having received the requisite constitutional majority are therefore passed. Chair recognizes the majority leader for a motion.
Mr. President, I move that House Bill 149 be engrossed.
Mr. Secretary, can you please read the caption on House Bill 149?
House Bill 149 by Representative Williamson of the 115th and others. A bill to be entitled an act to amend Chapter 7 of Title 48 of the OCGA relating to income taxes so as to allow for certain elections to be made by Subchapter S corporations and partnerships for the filing of tax returns and imposition of taxes, to provide for definitions, to provide for an effective date and applicability, and for other purposes. This completes the order, Mr. President.
The majority leader has moved that House Bill 149 be engrossed. Is there objection? There is objection. Would the majority leader like to speak to his motion? He waves. Would the minority leader like to speak to her objection? She waves. All those in favor of House Bill 149 being engrossed, vote yea. Opposed, nay. The Secretary will unlock the machine. Have all senators voted? Mr. Secretary, please close the machine. On the motion, the yeas are 34, the nays are 20, and this motion has prevailed. House Bill 149 is engrossed. We are now moving on to the rules calendar. We are now moving on to the rules calendar. Mr. Secretary, can you please read the caption of House Bill 119?
House Bill 119 by Representative Hawkins of the 27th, a bill to be entitled an act to amend Code Section 14-7-4 of the Official Code of Georgia annotated relating to professional services in which a professional corporation may engage, so as to provide that chiropractors may own professional corporations with physicians to provide for related matters and for other purposes. Mr. President, the Committee of the Senate on Health and Human Services recommends that this bill do pass by Senator Watson of the first chairman. This completes the order, Mr. President.
Chair recognizes the senator from the 20th to present House Bill 119.
Thank you, Mr. President. Colleagues, I bring you Chairman Hawkins' House Bill 119. This bill simply creates another option for medical doctors and doctors of chiropractic to incorporate. Currently, medical doctors and doctors of chiropractic can have different arrangements. They can have a LLC, limited liability corporation, a subchapter S corporation, MDC corporation, and they want to be able to join together in a professional corporation. Professional corporations in the code are for single professions, but there are exceptions already in the code for optometrists and ophthalmologists, for podiatrists and medical other MD specialties, and for engineers and land surveyors. So if you have a medical doctor that has a long-standing professional corporation and he wants to bring in a chiropractor as a partner in the business, current law would not allow that without that corporation being changed into a LLC or a sub-S or some other legal type of corporation. This bill does not allow chiropractors to bill or charge for medical doctor services. Each provider in the professional corporation would have their own national provider identifier number, and they have to bill under this number. So it does not in any way affect the way chiropractors are able to bill for medical services or which medical codes they're eligible to bill for. Mr. President, it's a straightforward bill, but I'll be happy to try to answer any questions if there are any. If not, I will ask for your favorable consideration and yield the well.
You have no questions.
Thank you.
Chair recognizes the senator from the 2nd to speak to the measure.
Thank you, Mr. President. The senator from the 20th did an excellent job explaining Senate Bill 19. But simply put, Senate Bill 19 creates another option for medical doctors and doctors of chiropractor. It allows them to incorporate. It's a simple bill. It does not allow chiropractors to practice medicine. It does not, what it simply does is allow them to incorporate so these two professions can act as one. It's good for Georgia. It's good for the people. Mr. President, if there's no questions, I yield the well.
You have no questions. Does any other senator wish to speak for or against House Bill 119? The chair sees none. Is there objection to agreeing to the report of the committee which is favorable to the passage of the bill? The chair hears none. The report of the committee is agreed to. Is there objection to the main question being ordered? The chair hears none and the main question is ordered. Questions on the passage of the bill? All those in favor vote yea. Opposed nay. The secretary will unlock the machine. Have all senators voted? Mr. Secretary, please close the machine. On the passage of the bill, the yeas are 47, the nays are 6. This bill, having received the requisite constitutional majority, is therefore passed. Mr. Secretary, can you please read the caption of House Bill 149?
House Bill 149 by Representative Williamson of the 115th and others, a bill to be entitled an act to amend Chapter 7 of Title 48 of the OCGA relating to income taxes so as to allow for certain elections to be made by Subchapter S corporations and partnerships for the filing of tax returns and imposition of taxes, to provide for definitions, to provide for an effective date and applicability, to provide for related matters, to repeal conflicting laws, and for other purposes. The Committee of the Senate on Finance recommends that this bill do pass. Respectfully submitted, Senator Hufstetler of the 52nd, Chairman. This bill does have a fiscal note attached. This completes the order, Mr. President.
Chair recognizes the senator from the 52nd to present House Bill 149.
Thank you, Mr. President. A few years ago, when the federal tax cut was implemented, part of the new rules were that the SALT taxes, as they call them, state and local taxes, were limited on an individual's tax return to $10,000. Now, C corporations weren't subject to this. There was a question on the S corporations if they were. And so this will help make it abundantly clear that S corporations' taxes are separate before they flow to the individual tax returns. This has been done in several states already. It has gotten a favorable review by the IRS, and these are federal taxes only. There is no fiscal note to the state. If there's no questions, I'll yield the well.
You have no questions. Does any other senator wish to speak for or against House Bill 149? The chair sees none. Is there objection agreeing to the report of the committee which is favorable to the passage of the bill? The chair hears none. The report of the committee is agreed to. Is there objection to the main question being ordered? The chair hears none and the main question is ordered. Questions on the passage of the bill? All those in favor vote yea. Opposed nay. The secretary will unlock the machine. Have all senators voted? Mr. Secretary, please close the machine. On the passage of the bill, the yeas are 52, the nays are 1. This bill, having received the requisite constitutional majority, is therefore passed. Mr. Secretary, can you please read the caption of House Bill 150 and the amendment?
House Bill 150 by Representative Williamson of the 115th and others. A bill to be entitled an act to amend Title 46 of the OCGA relating to public utilities and public transportation so as to prohibit governmental entities from adopting any policy that prohibits the connection or reconnection of any utility service based upon the type of source of energy or fuel and for other purposes. The Committee of the Senate on Regulated Industries and Utilities recommends that this bill do pass by committee substitute. Respectfully submitted, Senator Cowsert of the 46th Chairman. Regulated Industries and Utilities offers the following substitute to House Bill 150, a bill to be entitled an act to amend Title 46 of the OCGA relating to public utilities and public transportation so as to prohibit governmental entities from adopting any policy that prohibits the connection or reconnection of any utility service or sales of certain fuels based upon the type or source of energy or fuel and for other purposes. Senator Parent of the 42nd and others offers the following Amendment 1 to amend the Senate Committee on Regulated Industries and Utilities substitute to House Bill 150 by inserting to provide for automatic repeal following fuel on line 4, by deleting the quotation mark at the end of line 28 and adding between lines 28 and 29 the following. This code section shall be replaced in its entirety on July 1st, 2026, unless extended by an act of the General Assembly. This completes the order, Mr. President.
Chair recognizes the senator from the 18th to present House Bill 150.
Thank you, Mr. President. Good afternoon, colleagues, and happy Monday. I bring to you House Bill 150, which is a very simple bill, but it's very important because it has one goal, and it is to make sure that local governments don't follow some of their counterparts, that is, our local governments don't follow some counterparts in other states that have chosen to limit the choice that consumers have with the kind of utilities that they have in their homes. Berkeley, California in 2019 was the first local government to adopt an ordinance banning new natural gas hookups as part of their effort to reach a net zero carbon goal. Other cities in California, Washington, Massachusetts have followed suit. The way these things typically start is with the city adopting a goal to reach a net zero carbon at a future date like 2040 or 2050. The cities are then encouraged by activists into adopting these bans on natural gas and propane under the theory that you cannot achieve net zero carbon if you're adding more places than use those fuels. They enforce the ban through their construction codes and inspection authorities and in effect When folks want to build out or buy a new home, and of course many of these are starter homes for low income and moderate income folks, they're told you don't have the choice of what kind of fuel source you have, for example, for your water heater at home or for your heat source to heat your home. A few cities in Georgia have already adopted net zero carbon free targets and are likely targets for similar type campaigns right here in our state. While these policies may have well-intentioned folks behind them, my concern is that they ignore the fact that natural gas and propane are clean burning fuels whose costs have declined, leading to savings for the average Georgia consumer and also leading to a cleaner environment right here in our state. These efforts also ignore the importance of these fuels to small businesses like restaurants and hotels who depend on these cost-effective fuels to have as energy sources for their business and their home. Manufacturers and agricultures across this great state also rely on natural gas and propane for the production purposes, many of whom in our rural areas of the state that don't have natural gas as an option, and sometimes electricity may be limited with regard to the quantity, depend on propane, which of course is in a tank. Other impacts are likely to be felt like home building and commercial development as consumers realize that they're limited in choices in newly developed properties. Finally, policies limiting natural gas and propane will impose market barriers to groups that want to develop renewable propane and natural gas projects. These kind of projects, which are still in their infancy, will significantly reduce emissions from animal waste while providing new investment for jobs in rural Georgia communities across our great state. Fortunately, we can take a move today to protect our citizens and the local economies by limiting local government's ability to pass these types of bans. We would join 4 states that have already adopted similar legislation just last year, prohibiting local governments from banning new hookups to natural gas. Those are Tennessee, Louisiana, Oklahoma, and Arizona. There are at least a dozen states who have their legislatures going on this year that are considering similar legislation to what HB 150 gives you the option for today. So let's talk about what 150 does. It simply states that the local government or authority may not impose a ban on new connections of an energy product simply based on the type of fuel that's being delivered. It also prohibits bans on the sale of liquid petroleum products such as an LP tank for your gas grill or kerosene for your camping equipment. You know, at first, I had some question about the necessity of us having this legislation in Georgia, and had my doubts until I learned that the very place where this started, in Berkeley, California, just in the past few weeks adopted an ordinance, the next step of this, folks, which bans the sale of gasoline for automobiles in 2025. That's really what this is aimed at and where this is headed. It's your LP gas today, it's your natural gas heater that you want in your home today, but in Berkeley, in 4 years, no more sale of gasoline. So this bill protects the ability of local governments to choose their own fuels for the government buildings. What does that mean? Well, that means if the local government wants to have a local ordinance that says our city building is going to be all electric, that's fine. That allows them to do that. But it precludes them from taking away from you and your constituents and the folks across Georgia the choice that they may want to make for the kind of heat they have in their home or to heat their water heater or other type things. So there's nothing in this bill that prohibits a city from also providing incentives for electrification if that's what that city or municipality or county wants to do. Local officials will still have lots of tools available to them to reduce their emissions and respond to their constituent priorities. Friends, you'll also find on your desk a letter of support, which is Georgians for Fuel Choice. It lists numerous businesses and interests that are set forth on the bottom of the letter that tells you and shows you a very broad range of business interests and folks that have an interest in the future of Georgia that support this legislation. Ultimately, what this is really about is the preservation of our constituents' choice, the preservation of the consumer's choice to make smart decisions on what's best for them and their family and ultimately their home. So with that, I would encourage your support and vote for HB 150. And Mr. President, I'm happy to answer any questions.
You do have questions, Senator. Senator from the 26th has
Yes,
a question.
sir.
Gentleman in the well.
I do, from my good friend from Macon.
Isn't it true, after the debacle and dialogue on Plant Sheridan, coal-fired plant, that the utility itself went to natural gas, which was a lot cheaper per British thermal unit in producing electricity?
Absolutely, Senator. That's a great question and a great point to be made, that there's already a self-regulation going on within the energy sector of going to not only cheaper fuels, but cleaner burning fuels, and I appreciate that. Yes, sir.
You have no more questions, Senator.
Thank you, Mr. President. I'll yield the well.
Call upon the senator from the 48th to speak to her amendment. Call upon the senator from the 48th to speak to her amendment. Who's going to speak to the amendment? 42nd, come on up here. 48th signed it first.
Thank you, Mr. President. This is a very simple amendment. It would just put it in a sunset so that we would reconsider the policy in 5 years. And the reason that many of us think this is a good idea is, as was mentioned by the senator from the 18th, we have a number of cities that right now are looking at and developing policies to make their cities more energy efficient and more carbon neutral over a long period of time. So Atlanta, Savannah, Augusta, Athens, Clarke, and Clarkston are all have adopted some resolutions that by 2035 they would begin the process of going more carbon neutral in a phased transition. That is, of course, many years out. But legislation like this could severely hamper the efforts to do something like that. And the reality is that technology with electric appliances, energy sources, and public sentiment about all of the above are changing very rapidly. So there's not really a good reason to do something that seems like it might be a good idea now, but ties our hands later when everyone, 5 years to 10 years from now is looking back and saying, well, that was a really stupid thing that they did, because now the landscape has completely shifted and you have tied the hands of all these local governments when it makes all the sense in the world and everyone's in agreement that they should be able to go forward with some of these initiatives. There are a couple other reasons that I think it would be a good idea to revisit the policy as the landscape underneath this continues to rapidly change. For example, Atlanta right now is preparing to issue $10 million worth of bonds for affordable housing through Invest Atlanta. But under the bill, if they directly owned all the buildings, they could require them, the bids, to have all electric buildings, which are 30% cheaper to build than buildings that also have a gas hookup. But under the legislation, if they're doing it as bonds through Invest Atlanta and they aren't the 100% owner of the entire project, they will be prohibited from, even as a $10 million investor that's driving the entire project, they will be prohibited from requesting or demanding that those buildings be all electric. And that doesn't really seem like a good public policy to stand in the way, when actually it also makes consumer sense to have electrification in some of these affordable housing units. I've also heard that Athens Clarke is looking at something similar for some of their affordable housing projects. We don't have fracking here in Georgia. We don't have any coal mines here in Georgia. What we do have here in Georgia actually is solar, and that's also been expanding greatly. Over the last 20 years, that industry here in Georgia has grown substantially. And there are, in addition to things like solar, there are other technological changes that are happening as we speak. Consumers can now buy improved heat pumps and induction stoves. These can boil water in 1/2 the time as a gas stove. They also have no open flame, and they leave behind very little residual heat. What that means is they're much safer for children, for example. In addition to being faster and more energy efficient, they're also a lot safer for children. So there are all these things that are coming online. This is a dynamic industry. This is an evolving conversation. Americans and Georgians have had their attitudes and their expectations move on it very rapidly. This legislation only applies to new builds. So by tying the hands of local governments, we basically ensure that, 50, 60 years from now, we've prevented any sort of ability of local governments in Georgia to keep up with the times. And that's really what it's about. We essentially lock everyone in place, and we don't allow the ability to keep up with the times. And what can seem like a good idea now can prove to have been an extremely bad idea that everyone will be making fun of us for 10 years down the line, which is why I'm offering this sunset so that we can sort of assess the landscape of technology, appliance technology, and energy policy in 5 years and determine if this legislation is still needed. I'm happy to answer any questions, or I'll yield the well.
You do have questions, Senator. Senator from the 36, recognized for a question. Did you want to ask a question? You want to come to the front? Thank you.
Okay.
Senator from the 51st is recognized.
Thank you. Senator, will you yield for some questions?
Of course I yield.
So
Mr. Witt.
I'm not sure what the 5-year does. I guess my question is, do you support free markets for people, residents, residential developers, commercial developers to choose the energy source? Because today, they can choose whether they want to put in natural gas or electricity. It's not a mandate that they have to choose.
Well, I do support that, but there are also circumstances that I feel that the other side of it has a better argument, like in what I was mentioning about the affordable units that Atlanta is planning to put up $10 million to build. The data shows that building an all-electric building will save substantial money, and I don't really have a problem if they're the ones putting up this affordable housing bond if they require them to be all-electric. I actually think that's pretty good policy, and this prevents that. So.
Thank you. Will you further yield?
Certainly.
It seems like it would be more of an economic decision made by the person who owns the property or whoever's going to develop it, or the homeowner if it's a residential development. But just thinking about the restaurants we have here in Atlanta, if you go to dinner on a cold evening, there's gas furnaces overhead. So you would support a city or a county banning the use of all of that heat for their customers as well?
Well, the reason for my sunset, Senator, is that I just don't think that we can think about what energy policy looked like even 5 or 10 years ago. Right. It's so different. When I first came down here 10 years ago, the solar industry was just, we've done a number of things in this chamber, actually sponsored by one of our eminent, great work done by one of our eminent aides on the floor here from the Lieutenant Governor's office with regard to the solar industry. That has all changed dramatically in the last 10 years, and I think that if you're assessing the landscape as it stands right now, which is what you're doing, what might seem to make sense right now is just simply not going to make sense or be good policy in 5 or 10 years.
So would that not be an argument for free markets? Because we don't know what the future holds?
I think the people who would like this sunset and the governments that want it agree. Because what you're doing is actually inhibiting a free market and lowering the cost by saying that they can't do anything with regard to gas hookup, which is prohibiting them from following the changes and the benefits of changing industry.
I would think if you allow this bill to pass, that would preserve free market options more than your decision to sunset it, which would allow local governments to exercise their home rule or their local control to ban a certain energy. But let me ask you a question. Would you support local control to the extent that a city or county wanted to put a ban or a prohibition against solar panels in their community? Would you support the local
No,
control?
I would not support that.
You wouldn't?
No, I would not support that.
But only for natural gas?
No, not just for natural gas. What I'm saying is, do you disagree that as a whole, our country and our world has been trying to generate cleaner energy. I mean, if you fundamentally disagree with that, then yes, what you said wouldn't make sense, because then I should, if I'm going to say, hey, you know, we should sunset on gas policy, I would say, yes, you should sunset on solar. But the reality is that, of course, the entire conversation has to do with our carbon emissions, our energy policy, our climate change, whatever it is. I mean, we all understand that, and we know that over the last few decades, Americans and Georgians have had a much higher understanding of the need for all these policies. And look, down in coastal Georgia, coastal Virginia, where I'm from, I mean, everyone lives the effects every single day. In North Carolina, there was just a huge article about how they're having to put up a 50% tax on the town to try to save the town from the sea. You know, these things are a part of the things that we have to look at and grapple with and discuss. So no, I don't think you can equate like, oh, if you're against, you know, stopping any gas hookup, you should also be against stopping any solar, because one's a clean form of energy and the other isn't.
Thank you. One more question.
Sure.
If we were to ban gas, whether it's propane or natural or other forms of energy, would it not require more electric power plants to be built?
It does.
Including nuclear. So would you support the expansion of our nuclear program in Georgia?
The nuclear is a really tricky conversation, as I'm sure you're well aware. You know, so nuclear is clean energy, which is fantastic. It has some other shortfalls and pitfalls in the radioactivity of the waste. The fact that we, you know, don't know where to store it or bury it, and that if there are any problems that arise, like in Fukushima or Chernobyl or all these other places, that it's very damaging to human health and livelihood. So nuclear is sort of its own conversation in that regard, if you ask me. I mean, we do have the problem that with the, you know, bill that this chamber passed in, or this legislature passed back in '09, you know, I think Georgia Power said Vogel was going to cost $8 million and be done in like 3 years, and we're already at like 27 billion or 8 billion, 27 billion and running. So it's quite expensive. So
true, and it's expensive to build power plants, but it's also expensive not to build power plants, because you're trying to force everyone to use electricity. So you're essentially saying, let's stop using gasoline, no more natural gas, let's build more power plants. Unless we're going to stop building power plants, and then we have to rely on the sun totally for our energy source. So I'm not sure the 5-year sunset's a good idea. I personally think the bill is good because it tries to preserve the free markets. But thank you for your
I don't really disagree with, I don't really agree with your characterization of the sunset or the current energy situation. I think that the point is that the market, the technology, the sentiments, the understandings are fluid and are rapidly evolving and have been for several decades. And so if there are no more questions, I will yield the well.
You have further questions. Senator from the 28th is recognized for a question.
Thank you, Mr. President. Senator, do you yield?
Sure.
Senator, so would you agree that cities, certain cities, MEAG cities, own utilities, and some of which even have ownership in some of our coal-fired plants and other plants around the state, energy plants around the state?
I believe that is true.
Okay.
Mm-hmm.
And so would you agree that in 5 years, if they should see that they're losing dollars for their city to solar power, in 5 years you're saying that it'd be okay if they ban that solar? Is that what we're doing here?
No. All that happens if you sunset the legislation is we have the opportunity to reconsider the whole landscape.
But would you agree, though, that we would then allow them, they could ban any form of energy they wanted? So if they saw that they were losing money due to solar, they could ban that solar in their area.
I'm not sure. I haven't seen that. And you're saying they would have to bring a policy to us?
That this bill, is it not true that this bill is not allowing them to ban solar? And so when you sunset it, you are then allowing them to ban solar in 5 years when it sunsets. That's what you're doing here.
In 5 years, the legislature will need to consider the situation on the ground as it relates to all the things that we've been discussing. And we can certainly find out if that hypothetical at the time is something worth discussing.
Fair enough.
Mr. President?
You have no more questions. Senator, call upon the senator from the 36th.
Thank you. I yield the floor.
Beg your pardon, she changed her mind there.
Okay. Yes, I will answer the question.
She would now like to ask a question. Go ahead.
Thank you, Mr. President. Had a little mic problem here. Does the senator yield?
Yes, I
for a
yield.
series of questions? In a recent exchange with the senator from the mountains, the question of local control came up and free markets. But I would ask you, isn't the idea of adopting a preemption bill in support of a single industry an idea that defies local control?
It sure does.
And it defies the free market
It does.
approach?
I agree with you. Yeah.
Which we always hear being promoted by state leadership as Georgia being one of the top states in the nation to do business. Why would a bill like this make sense in that context?
Yeah, it does have, I think, far-reaching implications as the cost of other forms of energy come down, and these new technologies I mentioned, this new type of appliances, as there is significant change on that, as that comes down, then yes, it interferes with the free market to require that gas hookups not be banned. Yes.
Further question, if the senator will yield.
Yes.
For more than 5 years, our state, I think, proudly can say that we've been one of the top states in the nation. We've been a leader in clean energy jobs.
Right. Our abundant sunshine has been great in that regard. Mm-hmm.
And everyone may not realize that we don't have in Georgia significant methane gas reserves or fracking or drilling going on. Isn't that right?
That's correct.
And so when we import gas, when gas is used here, we send dollars out of our state.
Right. That's right. That's
to
exactly
import
right.
the gas.
Yeah. Our industry here, our industry here is in clean energy jobs.
And in fact,
for future growth.
The Energy Information Association, you may be aware, says that in 2018, Georgia sent $4.6 billion out of our state to buy gas. Are you aware of that?
I was not, but I'm glad you enlightened me.
And the sun, the good old sun that shines every day all across Georgia on fair weather, it makes a lot of sense to be moving in that direction as ways to heat our buildings and secure energy for the needs of Georgians, doesn't it?
Well, I would agree, which is why I think it's just better policy to take a look at this again in 5 years.
But yes, and I certainly support the thrust of your amendment and signed on to it for that very reason. It's simply very difficult to understand is it why we would. There's no bill introduced anywhere in Georgia that does what this bill says it's going to protect us from. Isn't that right?
Right. Well, I think the senator from the 18th did pretty clearly lay out the origins of this legislation, and it's that there are some cities in around, not very many, but a few around the country, looking to meet their clean energy goals and move to carbon neutral energy sources within their cities by a certain date, that are looking to eliminate or bring down gas usage in a transition over time. And so the gas industry does not like that for obvious reasons.
And it's safe to say, is it not, that this bill, the way it's drawn and what it purports to do, is going to throw us into court. We're going to wind up litigating this thing and relitigating this thing in court, and that a local municipality could actually not want to put in a natural gas storage facility and could be accused of violating this law. I mean, it really could be used in a number of ways with maybe unintended consequences that would very much surprise the local leaders in some towns and cities as they try to simply do what's in the best interest of their constituents.
Right. For example, this language on lines 20 and 21 about having the effect of prohibiting is probably one of the things that is most ripe for litigation, because that can have a lot of unintended consequences.
Thank you for giving us this opportunity, Senator, to put a sunset on this so that we can move forward with wisdom and moderation. Thank you.
Thank you, Senator.
Call upon the senator from the 41st for a question.
Senator, do you yield?
I yield.
Senator, isn't it true that technology advances at a very rapid pace in this country?
I agree with that.
And Senator, isn't it true that there was a time in our country where we believed that certain forms of energy weren't harmful to the human body?
That is true.
And isn't it true that we used to paint our buildings with a particular type of paint that at the time we thought was perfectly healthy?
That's correct.
And isn't it true that when we discovered that those things were not safe for humans, that we put in regulations to ban the use of those materials?
We did, and that was wise of us.
So, Senator, would it not be prudent for us to give ourselves an opportunity to review in 5 years what the advances in technology might create for us? And furthermore, would it not be wise for us to see what the science might bear out on the consequences that natural gas has on the health and well-being of human beings?
I agree wholeheartedly, Senator from the 41st.
Call upon the Senator from the 30th for a question.
Does the senator yield?
Certainly.
Senator, help me here. Where does it say in this bill that you have to use gas?
It doesn't say you have to use gas.
So it
says
just
that
prevents you from banning it?
Right, you can't say, on the example I was giving about Atlanta wanting to issue the $10 million in bonds for affordable housing, if the public-private partnership or the partners they're working with don't agree, I think if everyone agrees, it wouldn't be a problem. But if they don't agree, Atlanta would not be able to, under this bill, require an all-electric
Yeah,
building.
but they can't mandate that you put gas in here. So it's, where I'm going with this is, you know, I do some construction, and the construction, the customer often decides what is most economically feasible for particular projects. Sometimes it's electricity, most times it's electricity, sometimes there is gas involved. Mm-hmm. We don't tell the customer he has to use gas if the customer says they want to use electricity, and they wouldn't do it with the city of Atlanta either. The architect and the design team design and mandate what the energy source is coming into those buildings. That has nothing to do with where I understand you're going with this is the increase in cost by mandating that they use alternative forms. All this is doing is, in my reading, and you can correct me if I'm wrong, is it doesn't say you just are prohibited from allowing other forms of energy into a house. Is that not correct?
Can you repeat? I don't think I
The whole
understood the
thing?
end.
No,
No,
not
no,
the last
the
5 minute
very end.
diatribe I
I don't
was
think I
on.
understood what you're
What I'm reading this bill to say is that the local municipalities, all it's doing, it's not mandating that you have to use particular forms of energy. It's just restricting you from saying you can't use alternative forms
so
other than electricity.
You would not be able to, in the example I'm using about Invest Atlanta, they could not require all electric. That would be a violation.
But the design team could.
If they all agree, yes.
Well,
but the reason
yeah.
that we're talking about it is this is not, what the bill doesn't deal with the private market. The bill deals with governments, and it's actually up to us to consider energy policy and energy sources as a policy matter. That's why it matters what governments do in this regard, of course. So without governments, taking some action, having some incentives, that's why we've had many things to recognize the fact that some of these energy sources are not as beneficial both to human health or to our societies as a whole. I mean, for many different reasons, some of which the senator from the 41st got into. So governments have a role in that and always have. So this steps right on that.
Does the senator still yell?
Sure.
I understand what you're saying on the public aspect because it's saying that local municipalities, blah, 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 don't have the authority to restrict.
Right.
It doesn't mandate that they use. So it's the opposite side of the same coin. So let's say 5 years from now that the energy sources were coming from solar, from wind, from nuclear, from water, from waves, there's a litany of them that are out there, does improve to the point that it is more cost effective to use those forms of energy, that would help drive down the cost of building the housing area, for example, that you were talking about. But until then, we're not prohibiting, and even after then, I would assume, we're not prohibiting other forms of energy being used that are selected at private places. Is that not correct?
For private places, I don't think that's, that could be an issue, but the examples I'm concerned about are when the government, which I do think has an important role in policy in this regard, actually is, for example, putting up a lot of the money for the project. I really don't have a problem with them saying they want it to be all electric.
Senator, I disagree with you on I think it does specifically talk to private on this thing. And just one more question, Senator, if you'll yield again.
Sure.
Where does our electricity come from?
All kinds of different sources.
Where's predominantly in the state?
Ours is, I actually don't know what ours is predominantly. I mean, we have a variety of things. We've got
Natural
some
gas.
coal, we've got gas, we've got wind, we've got electric.
Primarily in Georgia, it's natural gas.
Yeah, sure.
So we're still burning natural gas.
Right, but the others have been growing. Natural
And I
gas became
support 'em.
really in vogue not that long ago because it was cleaner than coal.
That's correct.
But that's exactly why we should not assume that what we know right now is going to be the same as what's happened in even 5 years. Because natural gas wasn't even a thing that many years ago.
And I think that...
I mean, as a huge thing, the whole fracking industry and all that, none of that was a thing that long ago.
Thank you, Senator. I appreciate your answers on that. I think that the change from coal to natural gas, one of the factors that led to that was the decreased cost and getting the natural gas.
Cheaper and cleaner.
Which is my point in here.
But it is not. It is soon going to not be cheaper or cleaner than other forms.
And at that point,
that's why we should
I don't think
sunset
that
it.
you're going to need this sunset. I think the market will take care of itself. Thank you.
I don't know. I think here it says we wouldn't be. They still couldn't ban the gas hookup.
I don't think you need to ban it, is what I'm saying. Thank you, Senator.
Okay. All right.
Senator from the 13th is recognized for a question.
Senator Yield, please.
Sure.
Senator, I've listened to both sides. I'm trying to make sure I understand this. How would your argument on this amendment be if we were dealing with, say, Wi-Fi, for example, telling folks they couldn't hook up to whoever they want to hook up to? Like, you want to get it from satellite, you want to get it from cable, you want to get it from fiber optics, whatever. It's your choice. It's a choice.
No, I actually don't think there's much connection there. So.
But it's a choice, isn't that correct? I mean, we're limiting and you're telling them, you want to go back in 5 years, you don't have that choice, we can reevaluate it. I'm just saying I think it's a choice is what we're talking about.
Okay.
Okay, thank you.
Senator from the 37th, recognized for a question.
The Senator,
Yes, I am.
do you believe that individuals should have the right to drive a less efficient vehicle if they choose to spend their money that way?
They do, clearly. And that's one of the issues with this legislation is it's only for new builds. Now, do I also believe that the increased mileage per gallon standards, I am in favor of those for new cars. So
you believe that people ought not be able to invest their money as they choose. Is that correct?
you mean I'm in favor of better fuel efficiency in new vehicles, yes. And I am not in favor of forcing people out of their old car, no. So
you're not in favor of individual choice by individuals, and you don't believe individuals can make the best decisions for themselves?
I think there are all kinds of things that governments do, that private businesses do, that entities do, that try to move us toward a cleaner energy future. And I support those things.
Would you care to comment? Does Senator further you?
Yes, for one more.
Would you care to comment on whether it's your belief that Air Force One is a fuel-efficient vehicle?
It is not. Planes are not fuel efficient. I yield the well.
The senator has yielded well. Call upon the senator to the 18th to close the debate. Finally. Brevity is the soul of communication, Senator.
Thank you, Mr. President. I'm going to try to address some of the issues by amendment number 1 that have been raised, but I'm going to try to do it quickly. I think the heart of the comments we heard on amendment number 1 was when the senator, who is a good friend and I think is well-intended, but just seriously misguided, said it makes consumer sense, quote, it makes consumer sense to have electrification. The question is, who decides that? Inherent in the statement is that the consumer should make that choice. That's what consumer sense is. Each of us get to choose independently what we want. That's how the free market works. What makes consumer sense for me may not be what makes consumer sense for you, but you have that right to choose. But for some reason, we've got a twisted sense on this that somehow the city councils across the state ought to be able to determine what consumer sense is. Somehow this thing has gotten turned around backwards, and I appreciate the efforts and the sincere questioning of members of my party, in particular the majority leader, who was trying to simply explain and right the ship with this misunderstanding that somehow this denies us choice. No, this bill protects the status quo that we currently have. HB 150 preserves choice, and it preserves the status quo of us being able to make that choice. With regard to the diversionary suggestion about this one project in Atlanta for $10 million, well, of course, as the questioning revealed, what would preclude the owner from making the choice of which kind of fuel source they wanted? Nothing. The owner would have the right to do that. The concern that was suggested to you is somehow the investment bankers that might fund this, in fact, wouldn't be able to have the choice. They do have the choice. Lenders sometimes involve themselves in those type of projects. What it would not do, though, is allow, if in fact that this bill passes, would not allow the city of Atlanta to tell that developer, that architect, that owner, I'm going to tell you what kind of energy source. You just heard from the senator, and again, I think she's well-intended, but she said to you that electric buildings are 30% cheaper than gas. There was no citation to that number, no citation to the support for that. We don't have any idea where it came from. Let me give you one statistic that I will cite for you. The Home Innovation Research Labs, in fact, did a survey and determined that electrification can add between $4,000 and $11,000 to the cost of a new home. $4,000 and $11,000. That's when people that supposedly know more than consumers, know more than you that have the individual right to choose, those folks make decisions on your behalf and you pay for it, and at the end of the day, you have one less energy source to choose from than you had before. With regard to the specific amendment of the suggestion we ought to sunset this in 5 years, I think, in fact, what we really found is the best approach to this was what the senator said near the end of her comments, that in 5 years, if the legislature needs to see what the goals ought to be, we ought to revisit it then. And that's exactly right. If you're here in 5 years, if I'm here in 5 years, or whomever will be sitting in these seats in the legislature, will determine if, in fact, we need to limit choices of consumers, or if we need to have a market shift in the kind of fuels that warm our home and heat our water. The irony is the amendment attempts to predict the future. I suggest to you we need to keep the status quo. We need to have markets. We need to let the consumers decide. And as was pointed out by one of the questions, the ultimate irony of the position, and again, let's assume it's well-intended, and I think she is, the ultimate irony is it's trying to push homeowners to all electrification as if electricity just falls out of the sky and is not the product of some kind of pollution when it's produced. Over 50% of the energy of electricity produced in Georgia is fired from power plants fired by natural gas. So the irony is we're just going to not let you use natural gas at home, and the power company is going to have to burn more natural gas to give you the electricity that you now need. It doesn't make any sense. The amendment doesn't make any sense, but the bill does, and I would ask you to consider it. This is ultimately about choice. I appreciate the debate, and I appreciate the spirited comments about this, and I would urge your support for House Bill 150. With that, Mr. President, I yield the well.
Thank you, Senator. So the question is on the adoption of amendment number 1. Is there objection? There is objection. The yeas will vote yes. If you're in favor of the amendment, vote yea. If you're against the amendment, vote nay. Mr. Secretary, if you unlock the machine. Mr. Doorkeeper, if you'll check the hall. Mr. Doorkeeper, if you'll check the hall, please. On the adoption of the amendment, the yeas. Secretary, lock machines, please. On the adoption of the amendment, the yeas are 19, the nays are 31. The amendment has failed. The question is on the adoption of the committee substitute. Is there objection to the adoption of the committee substitute? Hearing none, the committee substitute is adopted. Is there objection to agreeing to the report of the committee that is favorable to the passage of the bill? The chair hears none. The report of the committee is agreed to. Is there objection to the main question now being ordered? The chair hears none. The question is now ordered. The question on the passage of the bill by substitute. All those in favor vote yea. Those opposed vote nay. Mr. Secretary, if you'll unlock the machines. Mr. Doorkeeper, if you'll check the hall. Mr. Secretary, if you'll lock the machines. The yeas are 34, the nays are 15. This bill, having received the requisite constitutional majority, is therefore passed by substitute. Mr. Secretary, if you'll read House Bill 316.
House Bill 316 by Representative Stevens of the 164th and others, a bill to be entitled an act to amend Code Section 26-4-82 of the OCGA, relating to duties requiring professional judgment and responsibilities of a licensed pharmacist so as to increase the pharmacist to pharmacy technician ratio for providing direct supervision at any time and for other purposes. The Committee of the Senate on Health and Human Services recommends that this bill do pass. Respectfully submitted, Senator Watson of the 1st, Chairman. This completes the order, Mr. President.
I recognize the gentleman from Georgia's first city to speak to HB 316.
Thank you, Mr. President. This is a rather straightforward bill carried by the pharmacist in the House and my Chatham delegation, Ron Stevens. This bill basically changes what is being done now during the pandemic. It allows a pharmacist to supervise 4 pharmacy technicians. It basically moves it from 3 to 4. It does actually increase the percentage of those that are certified in that 2 of the 4 will need to be certified instead of 1 of the 3. And that is all it does. Mr. President, I'll be happy to answer any questions. Otherwise, I'll yield the well and ask for your favorable consideration.
No questions. Senator, you have no questions.
Thank you.
Is there objection to agreeing to the report of the committee, which is favorable to the passage of the bill? The chair hears none. The report of the committee is agreed to. Is there objection to the main question now being ordered? The chair hears none. The question is now ordered. The question is on the passage of the bill. All those in favor vote yea. Those opposed vote nay. Mr. Secretary, if you unlock the machines. Mr. Secretary, if you'll lock the machines. On the passage of the bill, the yeas are 50, the nays are 0. This bill, having received the requisite constitutional majority, is therefore passed. Call upon the senator from the 20th. Call upon the senator from the 20th for a motion. For a motion.
Thank you, Mr. President. I request unanimous consent to gently lift House Bill 161 off the table.
Mr. Secretary, if you'll read the caption, this gently, delicately lifted bill.
House Bill 161 by Representative Tankersley of the 160th and others, a bill to be entitled an act to amend Chapter 42 of Title 36 of the OCGA relating to downtown development authority so as to remove a provision providing perpetual existence to such authorities to provide for related matters and for other purposes. The Committee on the Senate on Government Oversight recommends that this bill do pass. Respectfully submitted, Senator Harbin of the 16th. This completes the order, Mr. President.
The senator from the 20th has removed House Bill 161 from the table. Is there objection? Hearing none, HB 161 is removed from the table. I recognize the gentleman from the 20th.
Thank you, Mr. President. House Bill 161 is a Department of Community Affairs bill. It was sponsored in the House by Representative Tankersley. In Georgia, we have a lot of different kind of authorities. We have 231 downtown development authorities established by municipal governments, 39 of which are listed as inactive. Current code requires or states that these downtown development authorities will have perpetual existence, meaning they cannot be terminated. We want to change that to allow them to be able to be dissolved when they are no longer active, hold no assets, and have no outstanding debt or other obligations. Mr. President, I'll be happy to answer any questions about this complex measure, if there are any. If not, I will gladly yield the well. And
Don't hurry, you have a bunch of questions.
Thank you.
Does any other senator wish to speak for or against the measure? The chair hears none. The senator from the 20th. Is there objection to agreeing to the report of the committee, which is favorable to the passage of the bill? The chair hears none. The report of the committee is agreed to. Is there objection to the main question be ignored? The chair hears none. The main question is ordered. The question is on the passage of the bill. Those in favor vote yea. Those opposed vote nay. Mr. Secretary, if you unlock the machines. Mr. Secretary, if you'll lock the machines. On the passage of the bill, the yeas are 50, the nays are 0. This bill, having received the requisite constitutional majority, is therefore passed. Thanks, sir. Hold on, sir.
All right, which one are we on? HB 234, and we're going to take it off the table. Chair recognizes the senator from the 52nd.
Mr. President, I move that House Bill 234 by the House member who was also the House sponsor of Senate Bill 148 be moved off the table.
Ms. Secretary, can you please read the caption?
House Bill 234 by Representative Hawkins of the 27th and others, a bill to be entitled an act to amend Title 33 of the OCGA relating to insurance so as to provide for an option for self-funded health care plans exempt from state regulation under federal law to opt into Georgia's Surprise Billing Consumer Protection Act to provide for definitions and for other purposes. The Committee of the Senate on Health and Human Services recommends that this bill do pass. Respectfully submitted, Senator Watson I, Chairman. This completes the order, Mr. President.
Senator from the 52nd has moved that House Bill 234 be removed from the table. Is there objection? The chair hears none, and it's taken off the table. The chair recognizes the senator from the 52nd to present the measure.
Thank you, Mr. President. I bring to you a very good bill from our House member. Everyone remembers when we did surprise billing last year, and everyone remembers me telling them that the ERISA plans would not be included, which can be 60% of all the people in the population. At the time, a few states were looking at an option.
Senator, will you please refrain for a moment? I would ask you to take your conversations off the Senate floor and give your attention to the senator in the well. Please proceed.
As I stated at the time, a couple of states were looking at a bill that would let them opt in to the plan. We weren't sure about the constitutionality of it, and we did look at that. Washington State has been one that did it. It has been upheld constitutionally, and it's important for a couple of reasons. One, the feds actually passed a surprise billing finally that will take effect next January. They also said if a state has a complete plan, then that state's plan would take precedence. So this would let those ERISA plans opt in voluntarily, though I would think they would want to, and then they would be part of the plan and would have the same protection for their employees as the other plans do. The other thing is we really feel like we've got a good bill, and as a matter of fact, when I went to the Emergency Physicians Conference, or actually I didn't go to it, I Zoomed to it because those guys are the front line at the hospital, no telling what they've got. Now, if you're the senator from the 32nd and you live with one, you have to be with them anyway, I guess, but I try to stay away from them. But anyway, they said that the Georgia plan was the best bill in the nation, that previously Texas had the best surprise billing, so we definitely want to keep our plan. This will serve the purpose of letting our plan prevail come next January over the Fed's plan, and also the purpose of letting those under the ERISA plans opt in to surprise billing and cover the rest of the population that has previously been uncovered. It has been upheld constitutionally in other areas. If there's no questions, I'll yield the will.
You have no questions.
Thank you, Mr. President.
Does any other senator wish to speak for or against House Bill 234? The chair sees none. Is there objection to agree to the report of the committee which is favorable to the passage of the bill? The chair hears none. The report of the committee is agreed to. Is there objection to the main question being ordered? The chair hears none and the main question is ordered. Questions on the passage of the bill? All those in favor vote yea. Opposed nay. The secretary will unlock the machine. Have all senators voted? Mr. Secretary, please close the machine. On the passage of the bill, the yeas are 52, the nays are 0. This bill, having received the requisite constitutional majority, is therefore passed. Chair recognizes the senator from the 32nd. For a motion.
Mr. President, I move that House Bill 271 be removed from the table.
Ms. Secretary, can you please read the caption of House Bill 271?
House Bill 271 by Representative Reeves of the 34th and others. A bill to be entitled an act to amend Article 2 of Chapter 11 of Title 31 of the OCGA relating to licenses for emergency medical services so as to authorize the Department of Community Health to assess one or more provider matching payments on ambulance services for the purpose of obtaining federal financial participation for Medicaid, to provide for definitions, to provide for payment in the Indigent Care Trust Fund, and for other purposes. The Senate Committee on Finance recommends that this bill do pass. Respectfully submitted, Senator Huffstetler of the 52nd, Chairman. This completes the order, Mr. President.
Senator from the 32nd has moved that House Bill 271 be removed from the table. Is there objection? The chair hears none, and it is taken off the table. The chair recognizes the senator from the 32nd to present the measure.
Thank you, Mr. President. House Bill 271 will allow private ambulance services.
Senator, please stand by. I would ask that you take all conversations off the Senate floor and give your attention to the senator in the well. This is not a meeting room. This is the Senate chamber. Please proceed.
Thank you, Mr. President. House Bill 271 will allow private ambulance services to take advantage of a supplemental Medicaid program called UPL, Upper Payment Limit. Under the program, providers can provide the funds to the state to be matched by the feds, and that can be returned to provide supplemental Medicaid reimbursements. Currently, DCH has received approval from CMS and is moving forward to implement a UPL program for hospital and public-based ambulance services, but the federal government requires that a state statute exists for this assessment to private ambulances to take place. The goal is to be sure that private services can also participate in the program. We have about 20 counties that only have private ambulance services, and they're struggling like many other providers. This simply allows us to meet those federal requirements and ensure that private ambulance services receive the same payments that hospital and public ambulance services can receive. There's no cost to the state, and this passed the House and our Senate committee unanimously with bipartisan support. If there are any questions, I'll be happy to answer them. Otherwise, I'll yield the well.
You have no questions.
Thank you.
Does any other senator wish to speak for or against House Bill 271? The chair sees none. Is there objection to agreeing to the report of the committee which is favorable to the passage of the bill? The chair hears none. The report of the committee is agreed to. Is there objection to the main question being ordered? The chair hears none, and the main question is ordered. Questions on the passage of the bill? All those in favor vote yea. Opposed, nay. The secretary will unlock the machine. Have all senators voted? Mr. Secretary, please close the machine. On the passage of the bill, the yeas are 51, the nays are 0. This bill, having received the requisite constitutional majority, is therefore passed. Chair recognizes the senator from the 29th for a motion.
Mr. President, I ask for unanimous consent that House Bill 410 be taken off the table.
Mr. Secretary, please read the caption of House Bill 410.
House Bill 410 by Representative Lumsden of the 12th and others. A bill to be entitled an act to amend Part 2 of Article 2 of Chapter 12 of Title 16 of the OCGA relating to bingo so as to transfer regulatory authority over bingo from the Director of the Georgia Bureau of Investigation to the Secretary of State and for other purposes. The Senate Committee on Regulated Industries and Utilities recommends that this bill do pass. Respectfully submitted, Senator Cowsert of the 46th Chairman. This completes the order, Mr. President.
Senator from the 29th has moved that House Bill 410 be removed from the table. Is there objection? Chair hears none, and House Bill 410 is taken off the table. The chair recognizes the senator from the 29th.
Thank you, Mr. President. Colleagues, House Bill 410 is it's a department bill, and the intent of the bill is to carry out some of the things that we have been discussing here in the halls and discussing prior to the session starting. It's one of those pieces of legislation that we've looked into different law enforcement agencies and started determining what functions and duties they carry out that may be counter to their primary mission. And starting with our state law enforcement, what we have discovered in that currently the Georgia Bureau of Investigations is responsible for managing bingo operations here in the state, which I'm sure to some of our members here in the chamber is an extremely important part of their lives. But we feel that it would best be moved from a law enforcement agency over into the Secretary of State's office, because they have the personnel and the skill set to better manage these types of regulated programs. And really it's not conducive with the training and the responsibilities that currently exist within the Georgia Bureau of Investigation. If you'll notice, it's extremely simple. If you look out throughout the legislation, basically it replaces director with Secretary of State. And then it gets extremely clear on page 9, line number 199 through 216. It's extremely simple piece of legislation, and again, it is just a small beginning on what we've talked about doing for so long, which in the study committee discussed it this summer, is reevaluating each law enforcement agency to determine what they're currently doing in order to redefine and get them more focused on what their responsibilities are. And with that, Mr. President, if I don't have any questions.
You have questions.
Thank you, sir.
Chair recognizes the senator from the 28th with a question.
Thank you, Mr. President. Senator, do you yield?
I do yield to my friend from the 28th.
Senator, was the Secretary of State, were they
I'm sorry, sir.
consulted on this legislation?
Yes, sir. They were reached out to be advised that this was one of the issues that needed to be transferred to a department better set up to manage this kind of thing, to give the GBI an opportunity to focus their skills on where it's more important and where it's needed.
Thank you. Do you further yield?
I do.
Were the VFWs consulted on this bill?
As a member of AAAA, Angry Americans Against Acronyms, I'll need you to give me your definition of VFW.
Veterans of Foreign War.
I assume that our friends in the VFW and the other associations keep a close eye on anything impacting bingo, thereby impacting their revenues. So I'm sure they'll be aware of this, and I don't see a big bump for them as long as they are able to get the equipment they need and maintain their licenses to be able to continue raising funds for the veterans that use their services and the local citizens that come in there and support those very valuable community partners.
Do you further yield?
I do.
And what all equipment is needed for bingo? Can you walk us through that?
I will. One thing you got to have to play bingo is balls. And so what they have is they have a large cage, and they put these plastic ping pong balls in there that have numbers on them, and they roll them through, and they drop into a slot, and they call them out, and the individuals there have markers, and they mark the bingo cards as the balls come down with the numbers, And then I think markers, the cage, the ping pong balls, and the cards are pretty much all the equipment required that I'm aware of, as I'm not an expert at bingo.
Senator, is it not true that you truly know a lot about bingo? Thank you for your great explanation.
Thank you. I appreciate the questions.
Do you continue to yield?
I do, Mr. President.
Chair recognizes the majority whip for a question.
Senator, will you yield for a couple
I do.
questions?
I yield to my elder from the mountains.
When's the last time you played bingo, Senator?
I play many games of chance, but I do not recall the last time I played bingo.
Okay. Isn't it true that the only form of gambling that the General Assembly has passed in Georgia, other than the lottery, has been bingo?
That is true.
So was this is this a gambling bill that we're voting on today?
Yes, sir, we are. It's
Oh,
a
my
game
goodness.
of chance.
It's scary. I notice you have added the Secretary of State's name throughout this bill. Do you feel like this is going to put a lot of extra work on that department?
No, sir. I feel that they have plenty of time and the expertise to manage something like this. I think games of chances do better in that department than they would in a law enforcement agency.
Well, great. Well, thank you for bringing this important legislation. We look forward to voting for it.
And thank you to my leader from the 51st.
Thank you.
And with that, Mr. President, I'll yield the well.
You had no more questions. Does any other senator wish to speak for or against House Bill 410? The chair sees none. Is there objection to agreeing to the report of the committee which is favorable to the passage of the bill? The chair hears none. The report of the committee is agreed to. Is there objection to the main question being ordered? The chair hears none and the main question is ordered. Questions on the passage of the bill. All those in favor vote yea. Opposed, nay. The secretary will unlock the machine. Have all senators voted? Mr. Secretary, please close the machine. On the passage of the bill, the yeas are 49, the nays are 1. This bill, having received the requisite constitutional majority, is therefore passed. Chair recognizes the senator from the 24th for a motion.
Mr. President, I move that the Senate agrees to the House amendment to Senate Bill 9.
Ms. Secretary, can you please read the caption to Senate Bill 9?
Senate Bill 9 by Senator Anderson of the 24th and others, a bill to be entitled an act to create a new judicial circuit for the state of Georgia to be known as the Columbia Judicial Circuit and to be composed of Columbia County, to provide for the transfer of certain funds from the Augusta Judicial Circuit to the Columbia Judicial Circuit, to provide for and allocate circuit-wide costs and expenditures, and for other purposes. The House offers the following substitute to Senate Bill 9. A bill to be entitled an act to create a new judicial circuit for the state of Georgia to be known as the Columbia Judicial Circuit and to be composed of Columbia County, to provide for the judges and the district attorney of said new circuit and their teams' selection and compensation, to transfer certain judges from the Augusta Judicial Circuit to the Columbia Judicial Circuit, and for other purposes. This completes the order, Mr. President.
Chair recognizes the senator from the 24th to speak to his motion.
Thank you, Mr. President. Today I bring you this amendment that simply what happened was we made a mistake in the first bill to where the DA in the Augusta Circuit, we had it in the writing that he would run nonpartisan, and now it's made to where he can run either Democrat or Republican. And also on line 89, we forgot and left out or Burke County. And that's simply all the amendment is.
Chair recognizes the senator from the 22nd for a question.
Thank you, Mr. President. With Senator Yield?
Yes, sir.
Isn't that true that these two amendments were agreed upon, both the senator from the 22nd and the senator from the 24th?
Yes, sir.
Okay, thank you, Senator.
Yes, sir.
You have no more questions.
Thank you, sir. Ask you vote green.
Any other senator wish to speak to the motion? The chair sees none. The senator from the 24th has moved that the Senate agree to the House substitute to Senate Bill 9. All those in favor vote yea, opposed nay. The secretary will unlock the machine. Have all senators voted? Mr. Secretary, please close the machine. On the motion, the yeas are 51, the nays are 0, and the Senate has agreed to the House substitute to Senate Bill 9. Chair recognizes the majority leader for a motion.
Mr. President, I move that the Senate stand adjourned until 10 a.m. on Tuesday, 23 March 2021.
Mr. Secretary, please read your announcements.
Rules will meet upon adjournment. Tomorrow, Tuesday, March 23rd, Ethics will meet at 8 a.m. in room 307 CLOB. Veterans, Military, and Homeland Security will meet at 8 a.m. in room 450. Science and Technology will meet at 8:30 in room 310 CLOB. This completes the order, Mr. President.
Does any senator wish to make an announcement? Everyone looks like they're being blinded right now with this light. The majority leader has moved that the Senate stand adjourned until Tuesday, March 23rd, 2021 at 10 a.m. All those in favor of the motion signify by saying aye. Opposed, no. The ayes have it, and the Senate's going to stand adjourned.